Hi guys, my name is Christina and welcome to my channel and welcome to yet another episode of the podcast. In this episode, if my voice sounds a little bit strange, it's because I'm wearing aligners. I've been wearing them for many years of my life, so I hope I master to hide the weirdness of the sound a little bit, but it still might sound a little strange, so I'm just letting you guys know. So how are you guys doing? What's up? How is your drawing situation going on? Have you guys been drawing? Have you guys not been drawing? Have you guys been thinking about drawing but not drawing? How are you doing? My goal with those podcasts and with my channel overall is to inspire as many people to draw as possible. So yeah, I'm just curious what you guys are doing with your drawing process. Just let me know in the comments down below. In this episode, traditionally we start with just analyzing how long the episode is and how much did I draw. So this episode is just, as you can see, 26 minutes long, and it's not great. Like, it's not the longest episode that I've had. In my previous episode, I was telling you kind of about the fact that I was busy and I was traveling locally in Canada, within Canada. But I was traveling, I had a lot of busy stuff going on at work, so I wasn't as able to draw as much as possible back then. And I also was talking kind of like about that, starting the chapter is a little bit tricky, just because I want to draw several pages before I know if the scene, the new chapter is is looking good. So before that, I'm a little confused. I'm drawing a little bit slower than normal. So I guess this all contributed to that. So in this episode, it's still not the greatest drawing session, I would say. And I mean, not in the sense that I don't like the result. I just don't like the time spent. It just takes me a little bit of a mental kind of strain to get into the new scene, especially if the new scene has some complex stuff going on. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in this episode. So this particular scene, I find it a little bit complex. So I have my own kind of classification of the scenes and what I'm drawing. And some of them I deem more complex than others. And this one, I would say, is on a more or less complex side, not the most complex one, but still it has some complex elements. And for me, those elements are, for example, complex items of clothing, like clothing that has a lot of layers, characters that have a lot of different clothing element, a lot of accessories, a lot of jewelry, a lot of these things. And it's not hard because it's hard to draw. It's more hard, oddly, because you have to pay attention to this and remember that you didn't forget anything. And also it's just it kind of slows you down a little bit. Again, it's not as much as it's hard to draw. It's just you have to, as you draw, for example, mass of the character's dress, you have to pay attention that you have to be careful here on the edges, because here on the edges there's another element. They're wearing a vest on top, and you have to be mindful kind of in areas of contact of one layer of clothes with this vest that they're wearing. And if they're it's to make it faster, sometimes it's just faster to draw layer by layer, starting from an inner layer, so you don't worry about all those edges and then you just draw stuff on top. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's just something, just be mindful of the edges. The more elements the scene has, the more elements and details the character has, the more careful you have to kind of draw around the edges and contact points of those elements. Again, typically if the character is wearing something on top of something, you have to consider drawing shadow. And it's just all of those small things that contribute. So to me, the items of clothing is that makes something more complicated. Another thing that makes something more complicated is the amount of characters in the scene. In this scene, I have just two characters, but they're both, I would say, very complexly dressed, especially the old lady in res. She has a lot of layers to her clothes. Julia, the girl with the braids, she is not wear that complicated, but with her it's a little bit different. So actually jumping to another thing that can make the scene more complicated for me is that some item or something that is moving, or it's just something is changing from panel to panel that I have to keep in mind. For example, people or characters interacting with certain element, or people are people. Characters are interacting with something, some object. Then I have to pay attention to continuity. So it's like, again, it's not about hardness of drawing. It's more about the kind of brain power that it takes. And usually when I'm drawing my panels through, it's all about just getting things done. I usually roll some audiobook or YouTube video, something like this. So I'm listening to something that keeps me kind of keeps my focus straight and keeps me interested in what I'm doing, because a lot of the time, just to get something drawn, and as something like a comic, to get it done, it's not really like love of art on its own or inspiration on its own is not going to take you there. It's just you have to be in this more relaxed meditative state and have something, for me, it helps have something in my ears, just because when we think about our characters, we think about our stories, we imagine it all fast, but when you're drawing, you have to really go and be very close and draw it, and it takes a lot of time. So to me, what kind of takes me out of the process is if I have to think a lot. Usually I like to think on the line level when I'm planning my scenes, when I'm planning through kind of like what is actually going on, and also lines, they don't take that long. And with writing also, like, writing doesn't take me that long. Like, the drawing part is the long one, because if in writing you say, oh, this character gave this thing to this character, it's just one sentence, you can of course polish it and spend some more time on this sentence, play around with where the sentence belong if it's like a complete, like a novel thing. But if it's a script, it's just one sentence. But then to draw this might takes 2 panels, and it might takes like several days to do that. So those is definitely slower. So when I'm drawing, I like to just be focusing on a book or the video or something like this. So when the scene has this continuity thing that I have to keep in mind, like for example, in this scene, Juria, the girl who's wearing blue with braids, she has this kind of shoulder pad extension thing that she has, because in my story, like, they have pigeons and they communicate through pigeons. Pigeons can talk. Pigeons are very complex creatures, and they're able to transmit all sorts of different information. So when they have to have some communication devices, quote unquote, next to them. So basically it means pigeons, they sit on their shoulders and whatnot, and she is kind of processing a lot of different information. So she using several pigeons at once. So she has the shoulder pad extension that can extend one shoulder of her, so 2 pigeons can fit on one shoulder and another can fit on another. And throughout the scene, she kind of uses that she takes it off, that she holds it in one hand, then she moves it to another hand. And this is something that I have to keep in mind. And every time I start drawing, I have to be like, oh, what's up with this shoulder pad? Or were they holding this thing or not? Or what, again, the details of this old lady garment. Like, okay, I remember like she has this vest, but what does she have in front? And sometimes I have to go back to chapter, let's say 4, and just double check her garment. So those things make the scene a little bit complicated, just because it takes some of my brain energy, and I have to think about certain things as I'm creating this. So that's kind of why this particular scene was giving me a little bit of it was a little bit of the slow start. And also, especially when the scene has a lot of elements, for me, it's always a worry if it will all come together. So I will be drawing, for example, this fur that I'm drawing right now, that I'm going to be drawing sleeve of the character, face of this character, face of that character. But then in the end, does it all look good when it's all drawn together? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost like I have this worry if everything's going to kind of look like this weird Photoshop collage more than like a scene that you feel like you're in there. Is also because when you drawing a comic, it's, I think, something like with animation, you don't necessarily have time and luxury to decide how the lighting fall on characters in each panel individually. Because if you think, like, for example, people standing in their room and they're walking and they're talking, and if you get like different shots from each moment of them doing this, you will see the light hits their face, their clothes a little bit differently, even though it's the same lighting. It's just the direction going to be a little bit different slightly. So usually when you draw a standalone painting, what keeps it all together is the lighting that is uniform for the whole environment. But when you're creating comic, or for example, if you're doing cartoon animation, like you cannot just afford to do that. You have to consider lighting not just for frame or panel. You have to just set up the whole lighting for the scene. Then you actually can see in animations and the cartoons that are more complex and have higher budgets, this is where you have more variation of the lighting and how the light hitting the character within the scene, because it takes more time to do this, more budget, more people and whatnot. And for me, as I'm drawing comic, like I just cannot have this luxury to just establish like things too much on the lighting in every panel. I have to kind of establish the same lighting for the scene overall, and then just repeat it, the same idea for each panel. And this is where I get a little bit worried, because being a traditional artist, I just know it's just not ideal. It's just not how, realistic lighting works. And that's why I kind of admit to myself and kind of just surrender to the fact that my stuff, no matter how detailed I want it, no matter how photorealistic I want it, it will always be stylized. So this is from where I'm rounding back to this fear that I have. I promise it was not like a tangent that I went with no reason. So to me, that's why, like, when the lighting is a little bit off on each element of the image, it can read as a Photoshop collage, like kind of like bad collage. And I work in VFX industry. I do Photoshop collages professionally, and my Photoshop collages has to look like real things. So this is something that we always pay attention to, is the direction of lighting. Everything in the scene should be lit from the very same way, from the very same source. This is how you make it look like correct. So I'm always comprehensive if that I'm drawing the scene and I have lighting established for the scene and I have the stylization going on. If when I draw all the elements that I need to draw, all the characters, all pieces of clothes and whatnot, will it look normal within the scene, or will it have this Photoshop collage type of effect because it's more stylized and lighting is not that thought through? I don't know, you guys, if it makes sense. I'm really sorry if it doesn't, but as usual in this podcast, I'm trying to just share with you just whatever the hell is going through my mind when I'm drawing. But yeah, so this is one of another concerns that I have. Like, overall, I have to finish several pages of the scene or the chapter to just start feeling confident in what I'm doing. Another thing that I was a little worried about as I was drawing this particular panel is hair. And it's also a little bit like, as I mentioned a lot on this channel, every time I'm creating my new chapter, my goal is to improve the quality and lessen the time spent on drawing it. So it's always kind of like this balance that I try to do. And in chapter 8, I'm really happy with what I achieved. Like, I really love the look of chapter 8. And another thing that I started doing in chapter 8 is the way I started drawing hair. And again, this is not how I would draw hair for just standalone realistic drawing. This is how I decided to stylizedly draw hair for my comic. And the thing is, as I was drawing hair here for Juria, I started wondering if I decided on too much detail for hair. Like, I like the look in chapter 8 for the hair, and I started repeating the same look now, and it's just, I realized it actually takes not like a lot of time, it's a lot of details for the hair, and I started wondering, was it a smart choice overall for me to decide to do something this much detail for a comic? Because the thing is, even though I kind of like to think about how I can improve, what I can do better and whatnot, realistically the problem is that as I do this, I have to be mindful if whatever upgrade I'm doing, I can keep it up, and not keep it up as just like my style. Like, am I confident that I will be able to draw with the same quality? It's not about the quality, it's about more time wise. So for example, if I decided to draw hair with this level of details from now on, then every time now I will have to draw hair with this level of details, or it will feel like the drop in quality in my comic if I decide to simplify it. And then if there is more characters in the scene, the more characters happen to be there, the more time consuming it will start being, like drawing all this hair. And it's just something to keep in mind. And this is, as I was drawing Juria's hair, I started to think, if I overdid the quality for the hair, if I shouldn't have done it, if I should take an opportunity in chapter 9 to slowly kind of decrease the level of detail, like make it a little bit easier on myself, like kind of like have I gone too far in a sense that I created more problems for myself in the future? Because, and this is kind of what was happening in my mind. And then another thing that I started to think, like as a following thought of that, is that maybe now I should really focus on making things faster, because I feel like my focus on the last two chapters, chapter 7 and chapter 8, was how can I draw it better? Because like with chapter 5 and chapter 6, even though I'm proud of those chapters, I'm not as, I'm not feeling like it's my best work that I could have done. And of course it's comic, it shouldn't be my best work in the sense that like it still has to be simplified and stylized, because comic is not just one painting, is tons and tons of different, hundreds of different individual paintings that combine it. So the what says that the comic is good is not like how good is one panel, is how all together they are feeling. And if I would draw each panel as individual drawing, I will never finish my comic. So the finishing of my comic is a priority. So that's, but still, like chapter 5 and 6, I felt like I could improve on the quality. I still felt like it's not it's like it should be better drawn. So as I was working on chapter 7 and chapter 8, as I said, like I always have this like spend less time and do better quality, better details. So, and if I always try to keep both in mind, but it's okay for me if I just focus on one at a time, but then make sure, for example, if I'm focusing on quality, I'm making sure that time spent doesn't change, or if I want to speed up the time and I'm focusing on how to make it faster, the quality doesn't go down. So, and for chapter 7 and 8, I did focus on quality more. And I guess coming out of that, I decided, as I started working on chapter 9, I was like, well, I have to do even better stuff with quality, because with chapter 7 I did my push to make the quality better. With chapter 8 I was like, how I can do it even better. And then for chapter 9 I was like, well, how to do it even better, even more details. And now as I was drawing hair, I already started to think maybe I gone too far a little bit. But by the way, like I decided it's fine, I'll keep the hair like this. But overall I decided, you know what, at this point the quality, I like it, I shouldn't pursue the quality now. I should really focus on the speed and just making sure the speed is consistent, the speed is going up. Like just I have to make sure that is happening, because you know, with drawing and art, like good, better or whatnot is very, very subjective. So I might think certain things are good in my opinion, but they might not be even good in my reader's opinion. Like for example, sometimes when I draw something and I like how it looks, I got comments from people saying, well, I would like to see more of the like raw brush strokes. You make it too polished, like it doesn't feel like painting anymore. Like I like your like how it used to be before. And I don't like how it used to be before. I actually don't like seeing brush strokes in my own paintings. I don't like doing that. And it's like overall brush strokes, if it's digital, I'm not a big fan of, because there's no actual brushes in the digital. It's not a brush strokes. It's a strokes of pixels imitating the brush. And I don't see that as something aesthetically pleasing necessarily. If you're drawing something in actual paint and it's actual brush strokes, they have value. But if it's digital plays, you can totally not have those brush strokes. So why have the imitation of the brush strokes? I don't know. I have like some attention on another, like it's a topic for another time. But overall, it's just not everybody is going to be happy with that anyway. And if I'm pursuing this, how to make it the absolute best type of thing, I'm just pursuing it for myself. So it's not necessarily even objective thing. So it's like at some point you have to, at least in this case, to decide, you know what, it's good enough right now. And you know, if I will start adding more detail or more complexity, it might actually sabotage my whole process. So I'm just telling you the whole thought process that I was going through as I was drawing Julia's hair. I'm not kidding you. Like that's exactly what I was thinking about. And yeah, and I decided, you know what? Yeah, I will just keep the quality the way it is from now on, and I will make sure to to just have the time under control and make sure the timing is, because like again, these details, and it's really started hitting me in this particular chapter, because as I was drawing these characters wearing more complex clothes and more complex stuff going on, I realized, oh dear, like it's actually like all the improvements that I did in the previous 2 chapters, when there's more characters in the scene and when something gets more complex, it's like it takes more time to draw it, is this new improved style. Even though in chapter 8 I have a scene that has a lot of characters, but actually, yeah, that was a difficult scene in that sense. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I spent a lot of time on that scene, by the way. But yeah, so this is the thought process that I was having while drawing this page, and I think that's why, again, this drawing session is a little bit short, and the previous one was short. As you guys know, the way I'm doing my drawing session, like what I'm showing you is what I drew weekend before. So you're watching it on Monday, and on Sunday, before this Monday, this is where I record the voiceover. But I record the voiceover not over the drawings that I did exactly this weekend. I did the weekend before, because it just time-wise doesn't make sense. Like, I didn't finish drawing for the day. I cannot give a commentary of what I was doing, or otherwise I have to, finish drawing sometimes at 11 p.m., at 1 a.m., and I cannot just draw voiceover right after. It's just too stressful. I like to be a little bit ahead. So today, whatever I'm drawing today is not what you're seeing on the screen. And like this weekend, the one I'm living in right now is doing way better. I'm going way faster, and I'm going to talk about it more in obviously another episode of the podcast. But yeah, I decided I would share kind of this thing with you, because I feel it's something that you, as a, when you're creating a comic, this is something that you have to constantly think about. It's like, the goal is to finish a comic, the goal is to finish a page, the goal is that, rather than just to finish a panel. And if you go into a lot of details and a lot of like this draw throughs and draw very thoroughly, like it's great to aspiring to do that, but it can also kind of shoot you in the foot. And in my case, because my style is so kind of photorealistic, it's very not like dangerous, but it is. I mean, it kind of is, because like the style, when I'm thinking how to improve my own style, like I always have photorealism as the end game, like, but it's just, I don't know, it's just, for me, like the best drawn thing is photoreal, and saying photoreal is not like photo, like photography is more like real, like how real life looks like, because photo also kind of doesn't, I guess, represent to me like how real things look like exactly. If you just copy the photo, it's gonna look strange. It's not like our eyes perceive it. But yeah, so it's a kind of dangerous road to go, because like this is like, but I don't know how it's kind of like, for me, tricky to have this balance of kind of satisfying my own idea of how something that is well drawn, like very good quality drawn, should look like, and at the same time making it achievable for me to draw like this and draw it fast enough to finish a comic and produce consistent amount of pages and consistent per month and whatnot, and just move the story forward. So yeah, this is like always something that I'm struggling with, and sometimes I'm thinking about more deep things. I'm wondering, well, how, like, I will be drawing my comic, and then will I be able eventually to hire some people to help me with some things? Like, is it a possibility? Is it something that I even would kind of like, how much I would hate this idea, and like, would it be even possible? Because I feel like I will need some help, in the sense that I just need the more manpower. I just need more myself, because the story is so long, and I already set up on this journey to draw it in this particular style that is very detailed and time consuming. And I'm just wondering if potentially I could have like several people working for me and helping me to draw it, but it's just at the same time, but like, would I trust other people to draw my comic? Would I even like it, or will I end up just whatever they do to redraw it? Or we just like, even the idea that my pages will not be drawn by me 100% makes me feel a little bit bad. But because like, just I want to feel like my comic is my own. I don't want to share authorship or, you know, kind of like, I don't want to share credits for my comic with anyone else. And I don't know. It's a very complicated question, and maybe I have to make a whole video on it. But this is something that I actually am thinking about, because I like this very complex style and I like to get it better and better and better. But at the same time, it's just, and yeah, and I don't like depending on anyone else for my comic. Like, it just doesn't feel right. But at the same time, I need to draw faster. So for this chapter, I'm gonna focus on doing my best to draw faster. So yeah, guys, thank you for watching. This is was a very like rambly episode, and I feel like there is not much that I can talk to you about, like in regards of what I'm exactly drawing here tonight, like a little bit of fur, a little bit of hair. It's just, you know, going through the motions. So I decided to just have this rambling episode and talk to you about what I'm actually thinking as I'm drawing this. Hope I didn't bore you guys to death, and let me know in the comments down below if this is something that you can relate to, if this is something that you're considering or thinking about if you are a comic creator on your own, and or maybe this is just me who has decided to draw the comic in a not comic style that is very complex. But anyway, thank you so much guys for watching, and I hope to see you in my next one. Thank you guys. Bye.